High Consul Varoth had ruled the Galactic Union for 347 years. In all that time, no species had ever refused his commands. He had brought 63 civilizations into the Union, some willingly and some by force. It did not matter to him which path they chose. The result was always the same. They joined, they obeyed, and they served. His personal cruiser, the Ascending Light, is the largest vessel in the Union fleet. It stretched for nearly 2 kilometers, covered in weapons and shields that could destroy entire cities. When Vareth traveled, he brought fear with him. That was how he liked it. Today his ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of a small star system. The star was yellow and ordinary. The planets were unremarkable. But on the third planet from the sun, a young species had recently discovered faster-than-light travel. They called themselves humans, and they called their world Earth. Vareth sat on his throne in the center of the bridge. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations. His communications officer, a four-armed creature named Sect, turned to face him. "High Consul, we are receiving a signal from the third planet. They have detected our arrival," Good Vareth said. "Let them see us. Let them understand what stands before them." Behind the ascending light, 3,000 warships held position. This was only a small portion of the Union fleet, but it was more than enough to conquer a primitive world. Vareth had brought this many ships as a statement. He wanted the humans to know, from their very first moment of contact, that resistance was impossible. "They are hailing us," Sect reported. "Show me." The view screen flickered to life. A human female appeared. She had dark hair pulled back from her face, and she wore a uniform of deep blue with silver markings on her shoulders. Her expression was calm, almost relaxed. "Galactic Vessel, this is Admiral Laura Bennett of the Terran Defense Command. You have entered restricted space. Please state your intentions." Vareth leaned forward with interest. He had seen many species make first contact. Most trembled. Some begged. A few tried to impress him with false bravery. But this human showed no fear at all. She spoke as if she were addressing an equal. How amusing, he thought. "I am High Consul Vareth of the Galactic Union," he announced. "I have come to formally welcome your species into our great civilization. You will prepare your world leaders to receive me. I will arrive on your planet within 6 standard hours." Admiral Bennett did not respond immediately. She glanced at something off-screen, then looked back at him. "Consul Vareth, we appreciate the contact. However, Earth is not accepting diplomatic visitors at this time. You are requested to withdraw your fleet to the outer marker and await further instructions." Silence fell across the bridge of the ascending light. Sect nearly dropped his datapad. General Krath, the massive reptilian who commanded Vareth's military forces, made a low growling sound in his throat. Vareth blinked several times. He was certain he had misheard. "I am sorry. Could you repeat that?" "Of course," Bennett said, her voice unchanged. "The Terran Federation is not receiving visitors. Please withdraw your fleet and wait for further contact. We will reach out when we are ready to discuss relations." "You are telling me to wait?" Vareth asked. "Yes. You are telling the High Consul of the Galactic Union, commander of 17 star systems, and ruler of 1,000 worlds, to wait?" "That is correct." Vareth sat back in his throne. For a moment, he did not know what to say. In 3 centuries, no one had ever spoken to him this way. He had crushed rebellions. He had ended wars. He had watched entire species bow before him. And now, this creature, this human, from a world that had only discovered space travel 100 years ago, was telling him to wait. He began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and grew until it echoed across the bridge. His officers shifted uncomfortably. They had never seen him react this way. "Admiral Bennett," Vareth said when he had composed himself, "I do not think you understand your situation. Look at the fleet behind me. 3,000 warships, each one capable of turning your cities to ash. You have nothing that can stand against this force. Nothing." Bennett nodded slowly. "We are aware of your fleet's size and capabilities, Consul. We have been tracking your approach for several days. Think you know that resistance is pointless?" I know that you believe it is pointless, Bennett replied, but belief and reality are not always the same thing. Barath's amusement faded. There was something in her voice that troubled him. She was not afraid. She was not bluffing. She spoke with the confidence of someone who held cards he could not see. What are you saying, Admiral? Bennett took a breath. I am saying that humanity has spent the last century preparing for this moment. We knew that someday someone would come. We studied the galaxy. We learned about your union and the way you absorb other species. We watched how you conquered the Drellians, the Vorthok, the Sorthoks. We saw the pattern. She paused. And we decided, long before you arrived, that we would not follow that pattern. Terra is not joining your union consul. Not today. Not ever. Vareth's claws dug into the arms of his throne. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. You have been warned. You are barred from entering Terran territory. The boundary is marked at the orbit of Neptune. If your fleet crosses that line, we will consider it an act of war, and we will respond accordingly. You would go to war against the Galactic Union? Vareth demanded. Your species would be destroyed. Every man, woman, and child on your planet would suffer for your arrogance. Bennett's expression did not change. Perhaps, but we will not kneel. That is not who we are. Vareth stared at her for a long moment. He could see that she meant every word. This was not a negotiating tactic. This was not a bluff designed to win better terms. This human was prepared to watch her civilization burn rather than submit. It was madness. It was foolishness beyond measure. And yet, somewhere deep inside, in a place Vareth had forgotten existed, he felt something stir. It might have been respect. It might have been fear. He could not tell. You've made your position clear, he said finally. Now hear mine. The Galactic Union does not recognize your borders. We do not acknowledge your authority. We will enter your space. We will land on your world. And we will bring your species into the Union. If you resist, you will be destroyed. If you cooperate, you will be spared. The choice is yours. Admiral Bennett smiled. It was a small, sad smile, as if she had known all along that this would be his answer. Then we have nothing more to discuss, she said. Goodbye, Consul. I hope for both our sakes that you change your mind. The screen went dark. Varath sat in silence for a long time. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Finally, General Krath stepped forward. Hi, Consul. What are your commands? Vareth looked at the distant blue planet on the view screen. Such a small world. Such a young species. They could not possibly stand against the might of the Union. And yet, move the fleet forward, he said quietly. All ships to battle stations. We crossed the Neptune line in 2 hours. The order was given. The fleet began to move, and humanity watched them come. The Galactic Union fleet moved through space like a slow wave of death. 3,000 ships in perfect formation, their weapons charged and their shields glowing. At the center, the ascending light led the way. High Consul Vareth, watching from his throne as the distance to Earth grew smaller. Admiral Laura. Bennett stood on the bridge of the Terran Defense Station Horizon. It was a massive structure built into a hollowed asteroid near the orbit of Mars. From here, she could see the entire inner solar system on her tactical displays. Every ship, every station, every hidden weapon platform appeared as a small dot of light. Beside her stood Captain Daniel Harris, a tall man with gray at his temples and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. He commanded the carrier Resolute Dawn, the largest ship in the Terran fleet. Behind them both was Commander Michel Torres, a younger officer who had designed most of the defense strategies they were about to use. They crossed the outer marker 20 minutes ago, Torres reported. Speed unchanged. Formation unchanged. They are not even trying to scan for defenses. Harris shook his head slowly. Arrogance. They have conquered so many worlds that they cannot imagine losing. That arrogance will cost them, Bennett said quietly. She turned to look at the tactical display. The Union fleet was massive. Even now, watching 3,000 warships approach her home, Bennett felt a cold knot in her stomach. The Terran fleet had only 400 combat vessels. By every normal measure of warfare, this battle was already lost. But Bennett knew something Varath did not. Humanity did not fight normal wars. Signal all commands, she ordered. Execute Protocol 17. All platforms to standby. No one fires until my order. Cross the solar system, her words spread. On the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, crews rushed to their stations. In the asteroid belt, thousands of hidden weapons platforms powered up their systems. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, missile silos prepared to launch. Everything was ready. Everything was waiting. On the ascending light, Vareth watched the humans with growing impatience. They had not launched a single ship to meet him. Their planet hung in the distance like a small blue marble, seemingly undefended. Scan for their fleet, he commanded. Sect worked his console. I am detecting approximately 400 vessels gathered near the fourth planet. Mostly small ships. A few larger carriers. Nothing that presents a significant threat. That is all. Vareth asked. That is all, High Consul. General Krath rumbled with satisfaction. They must know they cannot win. Perhaps they hope to negotiate better terms by allowing us to approach unopposed. Reveth considered this. It was possible. Many species had surrendered at the last moment, hoping that cooperation would spare them the worst punishments. But something about Admiral Bennett's words stayed with him. She had not spoken like someone who planned to surrender. Continue the advance, he ordered, but keep the fleet ready for combat. The hours passed. The Union fleet drew closer. On the tactical displays of the ascending light, the Neptune line appeared as a faint marker in space. It was an invisible boundary, nothing more than an imaginary line the humans had drawn. Vareth smiled. Prepare to cross. On Horizon Station, Torres watched the enemy approach the boundary. 1 minute to the Neptune line, Bennett took a deep breath. This was the moment everything changed. Once the Union fleet crossed that line, there would be no more talking. No more warnings, only war. She thought of Earth behind her. 8 billion people going about their lives, trusting that their defenders would protect them. Children playing in parks, families eating dinner together, young couples walking through city streets. All of them depending on her, she would not fail them. Akamasos Bennett said, her voice steady. Stand by. On the view screen, the leading edge of the Union fleet touched the Neptune line. Contact, Torres announced. They have entered Terran space. Light them up, Bennett ordered. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. The Union fleet continued forward. Unaware that anything had changed, then the darkness came alive. From every direction, weapons platforms that had been hidden for decades activated at once. They had been built into asteroids, disguised as debris, buried in the rings of Saturn. Thousands of them, silent and waiting, now revealed themselves. Railgun batteries opened fire first. They launched tungsten slugs the size of cars at speeds that defied belief. These projectiles crossed thousands of kilometers in seconds. Slamming into Union shields with the force of nuclear weapons, the first line of Union ships rocked under the impacts. Shields flared bright and then failed. Hull plating cracked and broke apart. 3 ships exploded in the first 10 seconds. Vareth leaped from his throne. What is happening? Report. Sek's hands flew across his console. We are under attack. Weapons fire from multiple directions. I am counting. I am counting thousands of firing sources. Thousands. Vareth could not believe it. Where did they come from? Everywhere, High Consul. They were hidden. We never detected them. The ascending light shook as projectiles struck its shields. Alarms began to wail across the bridge. Damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. General Krath bellowed orders. All ships return fire. Target those platforms. The Union fleet responded. Thousands of weapons turned toward the hidden platforms and opened fire. Explosions bloomed in the darkness as platforms were destroyed. But for every platform the Union killed, 2 more revealed themselves. And the humans were just getting started. Admiral Torres reported from Horizon Station, enemy fleet has broken formation. They are trying to engage the platforms individually. Good, Bennett said. That is exactly what we wanted. Launch the second wave. From the asteroid belt, missile swarms erupted. These were not ordinary missiles. They were autonomous weapons, each one carrying enough explosives to destroy a small building, and each one capable of choosing its own path to the target. Tens of thousands of missiles streamed toward the Union fleet. On the ascending light, Sek's voice rose to a scream. Incoming. Massive missile launch detected. I cannot count them all. Vareth watched his display in horror. The missiles came from everywhere at once, flooding toward his ships like angry insects. Point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. For every missile destroyed, 10 more got through. Explosions tore through the Union fleet. Ships that had weathered the railgun attacks now found themselves struck by dozens of missiles at once. Shields collapsed. Hulls were torn open. Atmosphere vented into space, carrying screaming crew members with it. And still, the humans had not sent a single ship. High Consul, General Krath shouted over the chaos. We must withdraw. We are losing too many vessels. No. Vareth grabbed the general by his armored chest. We do not retreat. The Union does not retreat. If we stay here, we will be destroyed. Vareth looked at the tactical display. 800 of his ships were already gone or crippled. Hundreds more were damaged. The humans had hurt him worse in 10 minutes than any enemy had in 3 centuries, but he could not retreat. His pride would not allow it. His reputation would not survive it. If he fled from a species that had only discovered space travel 100 years ago, he would become a joke throughout the galaxy. All ships, continue the attack, he commanded. Push through their defenses. Once we reach their fleet, we will destroy them. The Union fleet surged forward, accepting its losses, driving toward the small Terran force that waited near Mars. Bennett watched them come. They are not stopping. No, Harris agreed. They are too proud to stop. Then we give them what they came for. Bennett opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Bennett. Execute attack pattern Delta. Make them bleed for every kilometer. The Terran fleet began to move. 400 ships against more than 2,000 survivors. It should have been a slaughter. But humanity had one more surprise to offer. The ships did not form neat lines or careful formations. They scattered in all directions, engines burning at maximum power, pilots pushing their vessels to the breaking point. Then, in perfect coordination, they struck. From above, below, left, right, behind. The Terran ships attacked from every angle at once, never staying still, never giving the Union gunners a clear target. What are they doing? Vareth demanded. This is not how fleet combat works. But it was how humans fought. With creativity, with fury, with absolute refusal to play by the rules, and the Union fleet, trained for centuries in predictable tactics, had no idea how to respond. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and the Union fleet was dying. Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, calling out orders as his ship twisted through the chaos of combat. Around him, explosions lit the darkness like distant lightning. Union vessels burned. Terran ships darted between them like wolves among cattle, hard to port. Harris commanded, "Bring us around that cruiser's flank." The helmsman obeyed. The Resolute Dawn rolled sideways, its engines screaming, and came up behind a Union warship 3 times its size. At this angle, the enemy's weapons could not reach them. Fire all forward batteries. The carrier's guns erupted. Streams of plasma and kinetic rounds tore into the Union cruiser's unprotected rear. Armor plating shattered. The engine section exploded. The great ship began to drift, dead and burning. "One more down," Harris said quietly. He did not celebrate. There was no joy in killing, even when it was necessary. Commander Torres contacted him from Horizon Station. "Admiral Harris, the enemy is trying to regroup near the asteroid belt. They are forming a defensive sphere around their flagship." Harris looked at his tactical display. She was right. The surviving Union ships were pulling back. clustering around the ascending light in a desperate attempt to protect High Consul Vareth. It was a standard defensive formation, the kind that Union commanders had used for centuries. It was also exactly what the humans had been waiting for. Signal Admiral Bennett Harris said, "Tell her the moment has come." On Horizon Station, Bennett received the message. She had been watching the battle unfold, directing her forces, waiting for this opportunity. The Union fleet was now gathered in one place, their ships close together, their formation tight, perfect. "All ships," Bennett announced over the fleet channel. "Phase 3. Execute." Across the battlefield, Terran vessels suddenly broke off their attacks and retreated. The Union commanders watched in confusion as their enemy pulled back. On the ascending light, General Krath turned to Vareth. "They are withdrawing, High Consul. Perhaps they have finally realized they cannot win." Vareth did not believe it. He had seen how the humans fought. They did not run. There had to be another reason. "Scan for threats," he ordered. "What are they planning?" Before Sect could answer, new contacts appeared on the display. From behind the moon, from the far side of Mars, from positions that had seemed empty, massive objects were moving. Vareth stared at the screen. "What are those?" "They appear to be asteroids," High Consul Sect reported. His voice was uncertain. "But they are accelerating." "Asteroids do not accelerate. They were not ordinary asteroids. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing them. Deep inside each one, enormous engines had been installed. Guidance systems. Armor plating. They were weapons, mountain-sized weapons, and now they were falling toward the Union fleet. "How many?" Vareth whispered. 12, High Consul. Each one approximately 2 kilometers across.
Ouch.
Each weighing billions of tons. Each moving faster with every passing second. "Shoot them down," Vareth screamed. "All ships fire on those objects?" The Union fleet opened fire with everything they had. Thousands of weapons targeted the incoming asteroids. Explosions bloomed. Across their surfaces, chunks of rock broke away and tumbled into space. But the asteroids kept coming. They were too big, too heavy, moving too fast. The Union weapons could chip away at them, but they could not stop them. The first asteroid struck the edge of the Union formation. It did not explode. It simply passed through, crushing everything in its path. Ships that tried to dodge were too slow. Ships that tried to shoot were swatted aside like insects. The asteroid continued on, trailing debris and death, until it finally sailed past and disappeared into the outer system. But it had destroyed 47 Union vessels in its passage. The second asteroid hit moments later, then the third, the fourth. One after another, they tore through the Union fleet like bullets through paper. On the ascending light, chaos reigned. Officers screamed reports that no one could hear. Damage alarms wailed without stopping. The great ship shook and groaned as near misses rocked its hull. Vareth clung to his throne and watched his fleet die. Ships he had commanded for decades vanished in seconds. Officers he had known for centuries were gone between one heartbeat and the next. Everything he had built, everything he had believed in, was being torn apart by a species he had dismissed as primitive.
High Consul.
General Krath shouted over the noise. "We have lost over 1,200 ships. We must retreat." "No," Vareth said, but his voice was weak now. The word came out as barely a whisper. "If we stay, we will all die." Vareth looked at his general. Krath was a warrior who had never shown fear in his life. Now, for the first time, Vareth saw terror in those reptilian eyes, and he knew Krath was right. "Signal the retreat," Vareth said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "All surviving ships, withdraw from the system." The order went out. The remaining Union vessels turned and ran, their engines straining to carry them away from the killing field. Behind them, the human fleet did not pursue. They simply watched as their enemy fled. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Harris let out a long breath. "It is over." Commander Torres contacted him again. "Confirmed, Admiral. The Union fleet is withdrawing. They are not stopping. Casualties. Torres was quiet for a moment. We lost 93 ships. Nearly 2,000 personnel. Harris closed his eyes. 2,000 men and women who would not go home to their families. 2,000 empty places at dinner tables. 2,000 voices that would never speak again. It was a victory. But victories always came with a price. And the enemy? He asked. Best estimate is 800 ships destroyed. Another 502 damaged to continue. The rest are retreating at maximum speed. Harris opened his eyes and looked out the viewport. In the distance, he could see the burning hulks of Union vessels. Closer, the remains of human ships drifted alongside them. In death, there was no difference between them. Get rescue teams to any survivors, he ordered. Ours or theirs. Anyone we can save? We save, sir. Are you sure? They attacked us. They're beaten, Harris said. And we do not leave people to die in space. That is not who we are. Torres nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I will coordinate the rescue efforts. As she signed off, Harris turned to look at Earth in the distance. The small blue planet hung in the darkness, beautiful and fragile. His home, his reason for fighting. They had won. For now, but he knew this was not the end. The Galactic Union would not accept this defeat easily. They would return with more ships, more weapons, more determination to crush the humans who had humiliated them. And when they came, humanity would be waiting in the aftermath of the battle. As rescue ships searched the debris for survivors, and engineers began the long work of repairs, Admiral Bennett contacted the retreating Union fleet one final time. High Consul Verath appeared on her screen. He looked older now, broken in ways that had nothing to do with physical injury. His eyes held the emptiness of a man who had lost everything he believed about the universe. Consul Verath, Bennett said, "Your fleet may withdraw. We will not pursue you beyond our borders." Verath stared at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. "Why did you fight so hard?" "You could have joined us. You would have been safe." Bennett shook her head slowly. "No, Consul. We would have been slaves. There is a difference. We would have given you technology, resources, protection. And in return, you would have taken our freedom, our right to choose our own path, our souls." Bennett leaned forward slightly. "Some things are worth dying for, Consul. Humanity learned that lesson long ago. It seems we had to teach it to you." Verath had no response. The screen went dark, and the ascending light, once the pride of the Galactic Union, limped away into the darkness of space. The news of the defeat spread across the galaxy like a disease, on 1,000 worlds. Billions of beings watched in disbelief as reports came in from Sol System. The Great Galactic Union, ruler of 17 star systems, had been beaten by a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel a century ago. High Consul Verath, the most powerful being in known space, had retreated in disgrace. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. And yet it had happened. On the Union's capital world of Sirith Prime, the Senate gathered in emergency session. The Great Chamber, built to hold representatives from every member species, was filled with shouting voices and angry demands. How did this happen? Senator Morth, of the Velian Confederacy, slammed his fist against his podium. "We sent 3,000 ships. 3,000. The humans used unconventional tactics," another senator replied weakly. "They did not fight as expected." "Unconventional tactics?" Morth's voice rose to a scream. "They threw asteroids at us. Asteroids! And we could not stop them." In the center of the chamber, High Consul Verath stood alone. He had removed his ceremonial robes. He wore only the simple uniform of a fleet officer, the rank he had held before rising to power so long ago. His head was bowed. His shoulders were slumped. He looked like a man waiting to be executed, and in a way he was. "The Senate demands an explanation," said the speaker. An ancient Quarren, whose voice still carried authority despite his age. "High Consul Verath, if you were given full authority to bring humanity into the Union, You were given the largest fleet ever assembled for a first contact mission. You were told to be careful, and yet you failed. Tell us why." Vareth raised his head. His eyes were empty, but his voice was steady. "I failed because I did not listen. The humans warned me. Their admiral told me to turn back. She told me that her people would rather die than submit. And I did not believe her." "You should have believed her," Morth spat. "Yes," Vareth agreed. "I should have. But in 300 years of conquest, no species has ever meant those words. They all said they would fight. They all said they would never surrender. And they all did, in the end, when they saw the size of our fleets. I thought the humans would be the same." He paused, his gaze distant. "They were not the same. They truly would rather die. I watched them throw themselves at our ships with no regard for their own survival. I watched them sacrifice vessels to protect others. I watched them fight with a fury I have never seen in any species, anywhere in the galaxy." The Senate was quiet now. Even Morth had stopped his shouting. "We made a mistake," Vareth continued. "Not just me. All of us. For centuries, we have believed that superior force is enough to conquer any enemy. We point our weapons at a world. We show them what we can do, and they surrender. It has always worked. It worked on the Drellians. It worked on the Sorthax. It worked on every species we have ever met." Shook his head slowly. "But the humans are different. They have a word for what they believe in. They call it freedom. And to them, freedom is worth more than safety, more than comfort, more than life itself." "Then they are insane," Morth said. "Perhaps," Varath replied. "Or perhaps they understand something we have forgotten. Perhaps there are things more valuable than survival." The Senate erupted into argument. Some demanded that another fleet be sent immediately to crush the humans once and for all. Others warned that the cost would be too high. Still others suggested that humanity should simply be left alone, isolated at the edge of the galaxy where they could harm no one. While the Senate debated, the news continued to spread. On worlds that had been conquered by the Union generations ago, people watched the recordings of the Battle of Neptune. They saw the human ships attacking against impossible odds. They heard Admiral Bennett's words about freedom and choice, and something stirred in their hearts. Andrella Prime. A young factory worker named Senth watched the footage in his cramped apartment. His people had been conquered 2 centuries ago. They had accepted their place at the bottom of the Union hierarchy. They worked in factories, served in menial positions, and did as they were told. That was how things were. That was how things had always been. But now, watching these humans fight and win, Senth felt something he had never felt before. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. It was hope. On Sorthax Major, General Kraft's homeworld warriors gathered in secret to discuss what they had witnessed. The Sorthax were a proud people who had only surrendered to the Union after a brutal war that had killed millions. They had never forgotten that defeat. They had never stopped dreaming of revenge. Now, for the first time, revenge seemed possible. "If the humans can beat them," a young Sorthax officer said, "then perhaps we can too." "We would need allies," another replied. "We cannot do it alone. Then we find allies. The Drellians hate the Union as much as we do. So do the Velians. So do a dozen other species." The idea spread through the room like wildfire. For the first time in generations, the conquered peoples of the Galactic Union began to think about rebellion. Back on Earth, humanity was also thinking about the future. Admiral Bennett met with the Terran Federation Council in the Great Chamber beneath the Rocky Mountains. The council was made up of representatives from every nation on Earth, all united, under a single purpose: the defense and preservation of human civilization. "The Union will return," Bennett told them. "We hurt them badly, but we did not destroy them. They still have thousands of ships. They still control 17 star systems. When they recover from the shock of their defeat, they will come for us again." Council President Samuel Grant leaned forward. He was an older man with white hair and steady eyes, elected to lead humanity through the crisis they had always known would come. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" "We need to prepare. Expand the fleet. Build more defense platforms. Train more personnel. Bennett paused. And we need to reach out to others. Others. The Union is made up of conquered species, Mr. President. They were all forced to join against their will. Many of them still remember freedom. Many of them still want it back. Bennett smiled slightly. I think it is time we introduced ourselves to them. Grant considered this. You are suggesting we encourage rebellion within the Union? I am suggesting we offer friendship to those who want it. If that friendship leads to rebellion, so be it. But we will not force anyone. That is not our way. The council debated for hours. Some members worried that provoking the Union would only make things worse. Others argued that waiting would give the Union time to rebuild and return with an even larger force. In the end, they voted to support Bennett's plan. Humanity would not wait for the next attack. They would reach out to the galaxy, find allies wherever they could, and prepare for the war that was surely coming. That night, Admiral Bennett stood on the observation deck of Horizon Station and looked out at the stars. The debris from the battle had mostly been cleared away. The damaged ships were being repaired. The dead had been buried with full honors. Captain Harris joined her. You should get some sleep, Admiral. It has been a long week. I know, Bennett said. But I wanted to look at the stars for a while. I wanted to remember why we fight. Harris followed her gaze. It is beautiful, is it not? All those lights, all those worlds, and all those people, Bennett added, living under the Union's rule, told what to think, what to do, who to be, never allowed to choose their own path. We did not start this war, Daniel. The Union came to us. They demanded our surrender. They tried to take our freedom. We had no choice but to fight. No, Harris agreed. We had no choice. But now we have a chance to do something more. We can show the galaxy that it does not have to be this way. That people do not have to live under the boot of a conqueror. That freedom is possible. Ahadis nodded slowly. It will be dangerous. The Union will not let us spread those ideas without a fight. No, they will not. Bennett smiled. But we have already shown them what we can do when we fight. Let them try to stop us. She turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of people were waiting for hope, waiting for freedom, waiting for someone to show them the way. Humanity would answer that call. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Neptune. In that year, everything had changed. The Galactic Union was falling apart. On a dozen worlds, the conquered peoples had risen in rebellion. The Drellians had thrown off their chains and declared independence. The Sorthax had rebuilt their ancient warrior culture and were fighting pitched battles against Union forces. Even the Velians, long considered the most loyal of the Union's subjects, had begun to question their masters. And at the heart of it all was Humanity Ambassador Catherine Cole walked through the corridors of the newly built Terran embassy on Drella Prime. She was a tall woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, but there was steel beneath her calm exterior. She had been chosen to represent humanity to the galaxy, and she took that responsibility seriously. A young Drellian aide hurried to keep up with her. Ambassador, the delegates are waiting in the conference room. Representatives from 7 species have arrived. They are eager to hear from you, 7, Cole said. That is more than we expected. The word is spread, Ambassador. Everyone wants to know about the people who defeated the Union. Cole nodded. She had given this speech many times over the past year, to audiences of dozens and audiences of thousands. Each time, she told the same story. The story of a young species that had refused to kneel. The story of the Battle of Neptune. The story of what humanity believed in. Freedom. Choice. The right of every person to determine their own fate. She entered the conference room and looked at the beings gathered there. They were so different from each other. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had skin like leather. They breathed different atmospheres and came from different kinds of worlds. But they all had one thing in common. They all wanted to be free. Thank you for coming, Cole began. I know it was not easy for many of you to make this journey. Some of you have traveled for weeks. Some of you risked your lives just to be here. That courage is exactly what we need. letting her words sink in. Humanity did not seek to become the enemy of the Galactic Union. We wanted only to be left alone, to explore the stars in our own way, at our own pace. But the Union would not allow that. They demanded our submission. They threatened our destruction. And so we fought. Sorthak's general spoke up. His voice was deep and rough. You won that fight. But one battle does not end a war. The Union is wounded, but they are not dead. They will recover. They will return. Yes, Cole agreed. They will. That is why we are here. Humanity cannot face the Union alone. Neither can any of you. But together, united, we might be able to build something new. Something better? A new alliance? Asked a Velian delegate. To replace the Union? Not to replace it. To offer an alternative, Cole smiled. The Union rules through fear. They conquer species and force them to serve. We want to build something different. An alliance of equals. A partnership where every species has a voice, where no one is forced to join, where freedom is the foundation of everything we do. The delegates looked at each other. For species that had spent generations under the Union's rule, the idea seemed almost too good to be true. How do we know you will keep your word? The Drellian representative asked. The Union promised peace too, in the beginning. You do not know, Cole admitted. Not for certain. You can only look at our actions and judge for yourself. We fought the Union when we could have surrendered. We offered rescue to their survivors even after they attacked us. We came to you not with weapons, but with words. We asked for nothing except the chance to talk. She spread her hands. We are not perfect. Humanity has made many mistakes in our history, but we have learned from those mistakes. We believe that the measure of a civilization is not its power, but how it uses that power. And we believe that true strength comes not from forcing others to obey, but from earning their trust. The room was quiet. Then, slowly, the Sorthak's general rose to his feet. My people have waited 200 years for revenge against the Union, he said. We have dreamed of the day when we could fight back. But we knew we could not do it alone. He looked at Cole with respect in his eyes. If humanity stands with us, we will stand with you. Not as servants. Not as subjects. But as allies, as equals. One by one, the other delegates rose as well. They did not all speak, but their meaning was clear. They were in. The Terran alliance was born, far across the galaxy. On Saruth Prime, High Consul Vareth watched the reports come in. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Species that had been loyal for centuries were now questioning the Union. And at the center of it all were the humans, spreading their dangerous ideas about freedom and choice. He was no longer High Consul. The Senate had stripped him of his title after the defeat at Neptune. He had been allowed to live only because some senators still believed his experience might be useful. But he had no power now. He was nothing more than an advisor to those who had taken his place. The new High Consul, a Velian named Cirith, summoned him to a meeting of the War Council. The humans have formed an alliance, Cirith said. 7 species have joined them. More are considering it. If we do not act soon, we will lose half our territory. Then act, said a Union general. Send the fleet. Crush them before they grow stronger. Vareth spoke for the first time. That will not work. The council turned to look at him. Some with contempt, some with curiosity, explained Cirith commanded. I faced the humans at Neptune, Vareth said. I brought 3,000 ships against them. I had every advantage, and I lost. Do you know why? No one answered. They were not afraid to die. They fought with everything they had, holding nothing back, risking everything for their beliefs. You cannot defeat an enemy like that with superior numbers. You can only defeat them by destroying their will to fight. And how do we do that? Cirith asked. Vareth was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I do not know. I have been asking myself that question for a year, and I still do not have an answer. He looked at the map showing the spreading rebellion. Perhaps there is no answer. Perhaps some enemies cannot be defeated. Perhaps the best we can do is learn to live with them. That is unacceptable, Sirith said coldly. The Union does not share power. We rule or we fall. Then you will fall, Varith replied, because humanity will never stop fighting. Even if you destroy their fleet, they will build another one. Even if you conquer their planet, they will resist. Even if you kill every last one of them, their ideas will live on in the species they have inspired. He stood to leave. I tried to warn them at Neptune. They tried to warn me. Neither of us listened. Now we are both paying the price. He paused at the door. I only hope you are wiser than I was. Back on Earth, Admiral Bennett received word of the new alliance. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning her attention back to the work ahead. There was still so much to do. Ships to build. Defenses to strengthen. New allies to welcome. A galaxy to change. But for the first time, she felt something she had not felt since the war began. Hope she looked out the window of her office at the blue sky above. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the orbit of Neptune, a new era was beginning. Humanity had shown the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for. Now others were taking up that fight. The road ahead would be long and difficult. There would be more battles, more losses, more sacrifices. The Union would not surrender easily. They would fight to hold on to their power with everything they had, but humanity would be there to meet them. Standing beside their allies, fighting for what they believed in, never backing down, never giving up, because that was who they were. And in the end, that was why they would win. The stars were no longer distant lights in the sky. They were destinations. They were possibilities. They were the future, and humanity was ready to claim it.